was it ever intimidating? Was it ever, because I mean, you're unsure of what's to come until it happens, of course, but were any steps along the way things that kind of made you take pause, like, is this going to be okay? Like, all of a sudden, there's the venue is packed and you're excited because that is a generic sign of success, you know what I'm saying? But did I'll give you a for instance. Sometimes a musician or band will come out with an album and it does really well and they're excited about that. And they kind of ride that high until they sit down and they have to write the next album. And then the fear sets in because they realize that they set a bar for themselves that were really high. Excuse me. So, and I guess that's kind of the question I was trying to ask of you, is that at any point during this journey, because it was multifaceted, did the fear set in? Did the fear set in because it was growing too fast, or the fear set in because you were going into unknown territories? Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Let me think. You know, if I'm honest, I think, you know that saying, ignorance is bliss?
Sure.
I just fell in love and fell so hard with music once I discovered it. Mm-hmm. I didn't think of any of that. As I've gotten older, I think... Listen, I've never given myself a contingent plan. You know, I've never had a plan B. Originally, before I figured out that music was what I was going to do, believe it or not, I wanted to be a doctor.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's all I was thinking about. You know, I did pretty well at school and I was like, I need to get really good grades because I want to be a doctor, you know? And then the music bug hits and I was like, I'm not going to be a doctor. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way. And from the financial secure point of view, I didn't even think about that. You know, many years later, so when I was like 19, again, maybe 19, 18, 19, 20, 21, around that scope, I was in a band that's not even one of these that I was talking about, but I was in a band that was doing quite well financially. And we were going on tours all the time, and I was making enough money from that band that even if my other bands didn't make a cent, it didn't matter. Mm-hmm. You know, now how the other guys felt about that, I'm not sure. I was never thinking about the money aspect. So none of that ever scared me. But I do remember a few years after that, I was in the car with my dad, and he had told me, you know, we're just shooting the shit, and he says something like, your mother and I were really quite worried when you said you want to make this your career, you know. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, and he goes, it's not an easy career. At this point, I know it's not an easy career, but I didn't care. I'm not scared of work. So I was never scared of that. And I'm not lazy, so I wasn't scared of that either. I was just kind of like, yeah, I know it's a hard career. He's like, yeah, but like some guys make no money.
Sure.
I'm sorry, that's my dad. And I was like, I'd never considered that. I've always made money.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I might not be Jay-Z rich, but like, I'm also not completely brain dead that I'm going to take all the money I make and just spend it on gear.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, I know there's gear, but like a lot of these things paid for themselves, you know, like, and so I think the only time I ever felt really strange or intimidated in any way was, again, to go back to ignorance, I just kind of assumed, hey, I love music and everybody else must love music. And so I became so obsessed with it that when I was younger playing in bands, I mean, I'm still playing in bands, but when I was like in my first couple bands, too young to even enter the venue, my parents would have to drive me. I'd have to sit outside. They'd let me in the venue would let me in to play, and then I'd have to sit back outside. I was typically in bands with everybody that was always older than me.
Uh-huh.
And the only thing, or the only time I ever kind of got weirded out was, I just assumed everyone was going to love music, and I didn't realize that some guys had vices. And it took me a few years to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And so as like a 15 or 16-year-old, when you've got like what essentially is an adult man talking to you in a certain way, or making you feel belittled in a certain way, you don't really understand, because you're like, you're
invincible.
a kid, and you're invincible, and like you don't really understand, and you're like, well, why is that guy in such a bad mood?
Yeah.
And then as I got a little older and I started to actually see some of these things, I was like, okay, I've been a little ignorant.
Sure.
Been a little ignorant here. Like, sure, I'm sure these people do love the music in the same way, otherwise they wouldn't be here. But their paths have taken them down certain roads that I have yet to go down.
Yeah, but a lot of people get plagued by the what ifs, and they kind of dwell on it or focus on it or try to prepare for the unknown, which is impossible. And certain personality types, I believe. I don't think it was all youthful ignorance.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, youthful ignorance can make you mighty brave.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you might stand to gain more as a result of that, because you walked right into the fire not knowing it was hot yet. That. I think that just comes with the territory there. That's cool. I was just more or less curious that, because the Johannesburg moment when you were saying, 30 plus 30 plus 30 more, and all of a sudden the venue sold out, I was like, y'all were awfully young.
Yeah, we were young.
Was any of it ever intimidating? But I guess you just, like you said, you fell in love with it so hard. It just, it was like diving in the deep end. You just, as long as you knew how to swim, you felt like it didn't matter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as long as people were showing up, we were buzzing, man. We were like, man, people are coming to watch us, and it's a freaking Tuesday night, and like, oh my God, like, we didn't realize how, like, it's almost funny. It's funny how, like, the way we built is, because as you get older, you start to see things in such different lights, and it's funny because, like, if you could appreciate some of those moments for what they were when they were there, versus being like, we're a popular band.
Yeah.
Oh, there'll be another gig tomorrow. Oh, whatever, bro. That kind of vibe. It's like, be interesting to know how you think about those things, But no, I didn't. I suppose in hindsight, some of my confidence could have been confused for arrogance. I never tried to be an arrogant, egotistical person. I've never thought of myself as one.
Yeah.
But again, you never know how people read you, And maybe because essentially we were kids, maybe people just thought we were the shit or something.
Yeah.
Maybe we did. I know I believed we were a very good band. I still do. I mean, that band hasn't existed in forever and a day, but I believe that band could have held its own against anybody at that time.
Sure.
It's like we were really individually great at our instruments, and there were songs. And I've always felt that the one thing I've got to say, I've always felt like the songs are everything.
Sure.
Because, like, no one cares if you can do the greatest drum solo for 10 hours or the greatest guitar solo behind your head while your guitar's on fire for 10 hours. And
hey, like before we started recording, you mentioned TikTok, and now all of that's in question, because it's like, I didn't know breasts were so popular. I didn't know they could run an entire platform, but apparently they can.
They can. And listen, that's a discussion my wife and I have gotten into a couple times too. It's like, if you're happy putting yourself out like that, all the power to you. Like, I'm not going to be the person to tell you not to do it. Like, whatever floats your boat, man. Like, that's totally, totally cool. But it's just interesting because I just think when it comes to music, to take it away from TikTok, when it comes to music, it's like there are genres designed for that. So if you want to show that you are that technically profound, play that genre.
Sure.
But, well, again, that's not fair of me to say. Play any genre you want. But it's funny because it's like, I just believe it should be about the song.
Sure.
I've always believed that. It's like, if you can have a 10-minute song and it's great, Bohemian Rhapsody, fucking incredible.
Yeah.
You know? But that's not to say that every song should be 10 minutes.
No.
Just like, hey, if the song's great in a minute, how many Green Day songs back in the day were a minute long?
Yeah.
Or 2 minutes long, and they were great songs.
Yeah.
Like, just focus on making a good song. I think that's what it's about, you know?
The band that you were in Johannesburg and then you said England?
Yeah.
When you moved over? Okay. All together. What was the name of that band?
We were called Pyramid Tongue.
Pyramid Tongue?
Yeah.
And how long were you in England before things started to fall apart?
A few months.
Wow. Okay.
It's pretty quick.
Yeah.
And listen, it wasn't anybody's individual fault.
Yeah.
We made some dumb decisions.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot to take on as young as you were, you know?
We were partying very hard, and, you know, our manager got sick and we didn't know how to deal with that, and people started to get stressed out with money
Yeah.
and relationships. You know, you had girlfriends at home.
Sure.
What are we going to do? I want to go back to my girlfriend. Oh, I'm making no money, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. There were various elements that came crushing down. The irony of the whole situation is as that was ending, we charted a song on the South African Top 40. Got to number 8 or 12, I can't remember. Got up there. Definitely within the top 15. And they were playing this thing 4, 5, 6 times a day.
Yeah.
High rotation on like big radio stations. And we weren't there. So it's like it's pretty ironic.
It is
it's
ironic,
like,
yeah.
It's like we had worked for years to get to that point.
Yeah.
We had a little bit of radio play before, but we'd worked for years to get to that point. Bands dream of that point.
Right.
And we had left to try and go to this greater opportunity, which never materialized.
Yeah.
You know?
After that, did that experience kind of become a metric with which you would measure up your current band or current activity or
from
current level, I guess?
From a how good are we live point of view, yes. Because that band was always very good live. I've been in bands that were better, but it only got better because we had a starting point. And if we couldn't do this, we weren't good enough yet.
Yeah.
And once you got there, hey, well now let's take this and put it here. That's what we were always trying for, you know.